Now, a little bit of a review, huh? We ready for a review? Who reveals you to yourself? The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit?
The Son.
Yes, the Son. Why? Because it was the second person who became flesh and dwelt among us. The Holy Spirit did not. The Holy Spirit's job is to sit there inside of our cerebrum and tap on it and say, guess what? You're enriching your faith and you're learning all that. Guess what? I want you to do some catechesis somewhere down there. Ooh, not me, please, not me, not me. The Holy Spirit loves catechized Catholics. I just want to warn you. You were called before you came here. Some of you might be called afterwards. And I can guarantee you that is a scary thing because that happened to me, as you know. And Moses came up with 5 excuses. I came up with the exact 5. And finally, I just, God slapped me up alongside my head and said, get out there and get in that presentation high school classroom and just suffer. Okay, that's what I did. Now, for whose sake were you made? For your sake or for God's sake or for whose sake? What?
Our sake.
For your sake. How can you find your sake? By giving up your sake. That is a peer. That's one of the main points that you take away from it. You're never going to forget that. You cannot find who you are unless you give who you are away. How can that be? Because that's the way God is. That's why. And we're made in God's image. It's really that simple. Now, I didn't ask this one. Who made you? Who made you? God made. Why did God make you? Serve him in this world and to be happy with him in the next. What's missing? For those of you who have taken my course, do not. What's missing for those of you who have not taken my course? What's missing? Let me give you an analogy. You either have children or you're going to have children, and those children come up to you and say, why did you cooperate in making us splendiferous procreation? Why did you cooperate with God in making us splendiferous procreations? I mean, in other words, why did you make us wonderful kids? And you say, well, that's easy. To know, love, and serve us until you're 18, at which time you can get a job and find your own path. Now, what do they really want to know if they're coming up to you as parents and say, why did you cooperate in making us? What do they really want to know? They want to know that even if they were a surprise, that somewhere, somehow, you came into being out of love. Exactly. That's what they want to know. Isn't that true?
Yeah.
Well, that's what's missing in the Baltimore Catechism. You were not made so that God would have more worshipers. God made you because he wanted to make you out of love. See? That's the point. Out of love for love. Out of love for love. Get that in your brain. That's the refrain that you're going to hear from John Paul II all the time. Edith Stein, Ezer Kenegdo. Ezer means what? Help, helper, helpers. Kenegdo means alongside, vis-a-vis, together, whatever. Okay? And Ezer is got a depth to it that we have not seen before, have we? Because Ezer is used 2 times in the Old Testament for Eve, right? And 17 times for God. So if it's 17 times for God, then we're looking at God as Ezer, a helper to the person or to the nation. And we're looking at Eve as a helper or sustainer. And we're seeing a connection, are we not? We should be seeing a connection. In other words, Eve as helper is, in a sense, analogous to God's help. That's heavy duty. Eve is not just a dishwasher and a planter of flower bulbs and, does the diapers and all this sort of thing, right? There's a difference between knowing evil theoretically and knowing evil through the doing of it. That's one of her main points. Now, you get that, don't you? In other words, we can see, yes, that would be evil if I did that, but I don't want to do that. But if I did do that, then I would know something I didn't know before. And it would be easier for me to do it the next time. True or not true? It's true. Here's another point. There's a difference in how the man and the woman see and treat each other before and after sin. Very true, right? But in Matthew 19, 3 through 8, which she points to in her book, Woman, she says, we've been redeemed. And therefore what? The original order is now restored to its original innocence? No, because we can't go back there. But it's actually possible to look at somebody opposite you and actually respect them now, because we've been redeemed. And we have to respond to that redemption. That's the big deal. Here's another question. Why was Karol Wojtyła's spiritual mentor a layman? Remember Jan Tyranowski? I mentioned Jan Tyranowski. Why was he a layperson? Why not a priest? Where were the priests? In Auschwitz. That's where they were. There weren't any priests. And so when young Karol Wojtyła learned about St. John of the Cross, he actually learned Spanish in order to read the original. And when he did Max Shaler's thing on Max Shaler, he learned German. How in the world can anybody do that? I have not a clue. Why did John Paul II write his first encyclical about the Redeemer of man? When you're talking about the Redeemer of man, who is the Redeemer of man? Jesus Christ. Christ is the Redeemer of man. Why does he focus on that and not, let's say, Jesus' Sacred Heart or the divine mercy coming from Jesus? Why doesn't he focus on that? He focuses on the Redeemer of man. Why? Because it's an actual historical fact. It has nothing to do with piety. It has to do with reality. And that's the big thing. When you're talking about philosophers, they're always questioning, what is it that's in front of me? I want to know what this is. That's a philosopher. That's why the church reveres philosophy and says philosophy is the handmaiden to theology. Why? Because if you're a good philosopher, you're going to be, if you get into theology, a better theologian. If you're a bad philosopher, you're not going to be a very good theologian. It's that simple. Now, I want you to listen to this very carefully. This is a question that I would have on a test, and I love giving tests, because most of you are going to just drop it. I mean, you're just going to keel over and you're just going to snuff it out. I mean, now listen to the question. It's a statement. If I said that the path of each and every concrete historical individual is by way of the Catholic Church, what would you say? Say true? False. Why? The Redemptor Hominis is exactly the opposite, isn't it? Please, guys. The path of the church is by way of each and every concrete individual. The church is the solicitous person here. The church's responsibility is to go by way of each one of us. That's the responsibility. Here's an analogy. Jesus coming. You've got the Sabbath. Is the Sabbath for man, or is for man for the Sabbath? Which one is it? See? You got to know these things, see? And it's got to be automatic. The church is a gift to us. It's an extreme gift to us. It's unbelievable. It gives us that sacramental life that we need to keep going. We don't give the church life. We serve the church and say, we're in a sense, part of the church and make and enrich each other within the church and so on and so forth. But notice what he's saying here. It's the path of the church that goes by way of each and every individual, not the other way around. Now get that straight and get it forever, okay? What's the missionary attitude? What must it always contain? Missionary attitude. If I'm going to do missionary work, what do I have to have right up front? But what is it when I look at you as an unwashed peasant? What do I have to have in my brain before I can say anything?
Well, you have to know about Jesus
Of course, but what?
Understanding of the other person's situation.
That too, but what am I looking at? Am I looking at a peasant who is not made in the image and likeness of God, or what? Yes. I'm looking at you. You are, let's say you're a peasant, you're unwashed, you are uncatechized, you are really off the boat, so to speak. When I look at you, I'd better realize, because it's part of my proclamation, that you are made in the image and after the likeness of God. That's the first thing that I do. See? Now get that. You got to get that. Those are the peers that I'm talking about. How does John Paul II define love? Simple. What is it? What's the phrase? To love is to? Perfect. Thank you. Yes. Right there, just say, give yourself a smiley face, okay? What was the importance of St. John of the Cross vis-a-vis the TOB? What's the importance of John of the Cross? If I made a statement last Saturday that said, if St. John of the Cross had not existed, you would not be studying the TOB. What am I saying? A reciprocal love is thus actually formed between God and the soul, like the marriage union and surrender, in which the goods of both, the divine essence that each possesses freely by reason of the voluntary surrender, are possessed by both together. So the love that goes between God and the mystical soul is possessed by both together. It's like a marriage union and surrender. So, and it's so deep and so simple that you can't. Are you kidding me? You say to yourself? Yes, you're not kidding yourself. They say to each other what the Son of God spoke to the Father through John. All that is mine is yours, and yours is mine, and I am glorified in them. That's simple. Why did Karol Wojtyła look at St. John of the Cross? What was he after when he did his doctoral dissertation on faith? It wasn't faith that he was looking at.
Looking for the love, wasn't it?
Yes, exactly. But what was it about the love that Karol Wojtyła wanted to know? We're going to find that out as we go through. Okay, so we're going to get into Wojtyła and Kant, and here we go. Don't freeze up on me.
I feel like we've been there today.
Yeah, yes, I know. Don't freeze up on me, okay? Now, the very first thing, by the way, Kant was 1724 to 1804. He died 2 months before he got to be 80. That's why he wasn't as wise as he could have been. Had he reached 80, see, he would have looked around and said, man, maybe I was wrong about a couple things.
So you just got all this just recently then, right, John?
Yeah, yes. Bingo, 8+ for you. You're making the connection. God, I love it. The very first thing we have to look at is the word subjectivity comes up. And that just, whoa, what is objectivity?
What it is. Yeah.
There it is. Is that a table?
Yes.
Is that an objective table?
Yes.
Is that actually exist outside of your mind?
Yes.
Yes, it does. Okay. So that's an objective, and that's objectivity. All these things that we see as objects, that's part of objectivity. What is subjectivity? Is it a good thing or a bad thing? It's a good thing. But we see things through our subjectivity. We're all made in the image and after the likeness of God, but do we have different wiring? Nod your heads. We have different wiring. We see the same thing a little bit differently. But we all want to know what the real truth is that's in front of us, but we have different ways of getting there, and we have different ways to describe the very truth that we're there. When we see Jesus Christ, we have a different way to describe that, don't we? I describe Jesus Christ philosophically, because that's my Jesus Christ, and as a redeemer. Okay, I do not think of divine mercy. I'm sorry. I'm just not a good enough Catholic to think that. I'm teasing a little bit. But I think of him philosophically. By the way, I go along with Edith Stein there. Edith Stein wanted to get to heaven. Why? Because of the choirs of angels and all the great stuff that's going on, and the music was more than, there was Bach and Mozart together. No. You know what she said? I want to see for the very first time uncreated being. I don't even know what that looks like. None of us do, see? Uncreated being. Can you imagine having that turn you on? No. But she's a philosopher, get it? I mean, she's a philosopher. She wants to know what that looks like. Now she does. Subjectivity is something that we are born with. By the way, let me put it this way. You have an extraordinary what? Camera system and a computer that's hooked up with your camera system. Does that make sense? It's extraordinary. But guess what I see all of you, and I see color and form and shape, right? Right? And all of you see pretty much the same thing. If I said that table is like this and it's brown, you'd say, yeah, that makes sense to me. But notice what I'm doing. My brain is sitting there taking all this color and form in there, and it's formulating that, and it comes back out to my cerebrum and said, well, there are so many people in this room, and you are who you are, and you have names and everything. So am I making up the reality, or is the reality out there and I'm simply saying yes to it? See, that's the key philosophical question. And that's where we're going to get into. The subjectivist, the pure subjectivist, is one who is saying, I make up the reality because it's my computer system and my camera. You can see where you can fall into that. Yes?
Yes.
Okay, well, that's precisely what we're dealing with today. Medieval accounts of nature had shared a sense of the interiority and depth of natural things. If I show you this, by the way, this is the apple that should have been on my desk. Because I knew nobody was going to bring one, I brought one. Okay. See, this is the apple that, by the way, the ancestor of this apple was hanging on the tree, of course, that infamous tree, knowledge of good and evil. I'm teasing. But you see, this, when you look at this apple, does this look like an orange to you?
No.
It looks like an apple. Is it an orange?
No.
We know it's not. It's an apple. Now, is there a seed in this apple?
Yes.
Bunch of seeds. Can one of those seeds create an apple tree? Yes.
Yes.
Is that mysterious to you? Are you in awe?
It was.
Are you in awe that a little seed can grow up in? You're not in awe?
I am in awe.
I'm in awe.
I'm in awe.
I don't know what's right. Where in the world? Did you create this apple? Did you create the seed? No. Okay. So there's an interiority. There's an awesomeness within this object, isn't there? And everybody would admit that. This is not a giraffe. This is not a muskrat. And what is the essence of this apple? Appleness. It's whatever makes the apple an apple. That's what it is. And you can't, no matter how much your will wants this to be an orange, Claire, you can't make it into an orange, can you? You can't. No, there's no way. So what I'm going to read now is the fact that in Thomas Aquinas' day, and all the way from the Greeks up to St. Thomas Aquinas, philosophers and theologians looked at nature and said, whoa. The Greeks are the first ones who said, holy Toledo, you mean that's real out there? What can we say about that? Does that have the same kind of stuff as this over here? Can we say certain things that are universal about anything that's created? And they came up with, yes, we can. We can do that. And we're sitting there and looking at it, and most of us take things for granted. The sun, the trees, the birds, but most of us are sitting there and saying, oh my goodness gracious. Wake up to the sun, you say, oh my God, there it comes up again in the east. It doesn't come up in the west, it comes up in the east, it doesn't come from the north, so on and so forth. So we're sitting there and we respect what we see. Why? Because it has something of its own. We didn't make it, and our brains don't make it what it is. It is what it is by itself. Now let me read this. Medieval accounts of nature had shared a sense of interiority and depth of all natural beings. Natural beings were seen as constituted by their own interior principles and causes that involve a relation both to their creative origin and to their end and good. Nature comes from the wisdom of God and acts for an end. The good is the cause of causes. We're going to get into the causes in a second. Skip down to the next paragraph. The mechanistic account of nature in the wake of Bacon and Descartes denied the interiority of material beings and consequently the kinship of the human person with the sub-rational natural cosmos. We have a connection with everything that's outside of us. Why? Because in a sense, we respect it as something of its own. See? If we thought we made this kind of thing, if we made apples, if we somehow out of nothing, we made this stuff because our minds are that powerful, we'd sit there, would we respect it? No, because we make another one. Throw that one away, we make another one. Okay. Alone in an inhospitable world that has been deprived of inner meaning, the freedom of the conscious subject becomes absolute, detached from sources of meaning. The modern shift gave to the human subject an absolute status precisely in its character qua consciousness. Qua means as consciousness. It's a philosophical term, don't worry about it. For human consciousness not only sets its own terms, but the terms of reality itself. Now that is the big sentence. If you have a pencil or a highlighter, highlight that. Because what's happening is that the human mind that is so sharp, Francis Bacon was extraordinarily bright, as was René Descartes. And they sat there and looked at reality and said, well, I'm making this reality up as I go along. So I get to determine what is and what isn't. That's what I do. That because I've got this mind that does this. Wow. I'm the arbiter of what's real and what isn't real. Bacon, Descartes, and a new subjectivity. Notice new subjectivity. By the way, Karol Wojtyła likes subjectivity, but you deal with it in a certain way. You don't deal with it like Francis Bacon does or René Descartes. Francis Bacon articulates the fundamental philosophical principles that came to inform the overall shape of scientific reason. The title Great Ostration alludes, that's renovation and restoration, alludes perhaps with some irony to Ephesians, which speaks of God's action in the fullness of time to gather everything under Christ as head. You see there? Causes of being. Now, these do not cause being, so we probably should change the word cause to what? Aspect, because that gives you a better clue. None of these causes cause anything. They are considered, that's what the Greeks called causes, because they looked out at every single thing that was created and saying, what does everything have in common? What does everything have in common? They came up with 4 things. Those are the 4. Formal cause. What's the formal cause? What's the formal aspect of being? The formal aspect of being is what makes a thing what it is. What is this? What makes this what it is? And we've already come up with that. Appleness. What makes a muskrat a muskrat? Muskratness. We have a formal being. What's our formal being? What is our formal cause? Humanness. We're human. We're not a muskrat. We're not giraffe. We're human. We'll get to the problem here in a bit. What's the material cause? Well, the material cause can be the material it's made out of, but it's more than that, actually. If you're looking at the statue of David, have you ever seen the statue of David? If you have seen a remarkable, it's just absolutely, I sat there and looked at that for 20 minutes. I couldn't believe it. It's huge. I'm looking at how can anybody do this? How could anybody see this in a block of marble? This is not possible. Well, anyway, I look, what is the material cause? The material cause is Michelangelo. I'm sorry, the material cause is the marble out of which it's made. But there's more to it than that, because that gets you into it doesn't say what the material cause is deeply enough. The fact that it exists is the material cause. I can think of your existence, right? Dale, I can think, let's say you disappeared. You went poof. But I can think in my mind that Dale exists. Material cause comes in and says, but there you are. See, it's not in my mind, you're actually in existence. That's the material cause. Now we jump to God. Does God have a formal and a material cause?
Yeah, now you're getting a high level
Yeah,
I don't know.
He has his God. Yes,
Whoa.
it is. He has his God.
Formal has godness.
Yeah, he's got
So
his
God
God.
has
Yeah,
formal.
okay. So what's the difference between God and us? If you took away the form of God, would God...
Only you could
see-
ask that
See?
question.
Okay. Let me cut to the chase. God's form is his material form. In other words, God's form, godness, is existence.
Okay.
Existence is his essence. His essence is his existence. His existence is his essence. That's the only entity we know of who has no problem. Because why? Because he's uncreated being. Thank you. Okay, efficient, it's whoever made that. Okay. Who made you? God made you, but who cooperated? Your parents, etc., and on and on and on and on and on. Okay, so it just gets really convoluted. Final, what purpose do you serve? Why did God make you? See, why did God make the apple? Why did God make the acorn? Why did God make the oak tree, the giraffe, all that stuff? Every single thing has an answer. Now, the amazing thing for us is when we come from the Greeks and St. Thomas Aquinas, this is when we start to see the mystery and the nature. Remember I said man is to biology as God is to nature? You remember that? Well, when we do biology and we say, oh, now we understand everything, and it all came from slime somehow, because in 4.5 billion years it had to come up with something, we have missed the whole entire point of this. We're looking at all this stuff and we are in awe. Why? Because we didn't make it. Do you own your own bodies? No, you don't. Why? Because you didn't make your own bodies. That's why. If you made your body out of nothing, you would own your body and you could do whatever you wanted to with it. But you don't. You can't. God's essence is existence. Does that make sense? His existence is his essence. He is existence itself. That's why you don't have a split. And that's the only being that does not have a split like that. The one is the other. That's why God is who God is. And we're not. We're contingent beings. We're contingent upon God. God keeps us in being, by the way. That's our faith. You would not, if God stopped thinking about you, if I stopped thinking about you, would you disappear? I hope not, okay? But if God stopped thinking about you, just like that, that's our faith, see? But the truth is that he keeps us in being with his love and his thought. Efficient is that which makes what it is it.
Who made you?
You make this table is tableness. Who made it? A carpenter. See? That's the efficient cause. What's the final cause? For us to sit around and have TOB courses. That's what is the final cause. Is it used for anything else? Well, I hope not. I'm teasing. But you see what I mean. Your final cause is to have a mystical relationship with whom? Existence. And not only that, but have a communion of persons with everybody else, the saints. Hello? You have no idea what's awaiting you. Okay, let's go back now. Authority over it belonged to the human race before the fall, and it is to this primeval condition that Bacon intends to return, undoing the consequences of the fall as far as possible. The scholastic wisdom. What is scholastic wisdom? Quickly. It is, this scholastic wisdom comes from St. Thomas. In other words, it was all that I want to be St. Thomas's, tried to do St. Thomas. They are scholastics. And it got to be watered down, and it got to be all over the place. The scholastic wisdom of his own time, Bacon asserts, is immature. I love this. For its value and utility, it must be plainly avowed that wisdom which we have derived principally from the Greeks is but like the boyhood of knowledge and has the characteristic property of boys. It can talk, but it cannot generate, for it is fruitful of controversies but barren of works. In other words, they're impotent. See, Thomas Aquinas was impotent. All the Greeks were impotent. He is fruitful. Dear God, I mean, talk about kissing one's forearm.
Oh my gosh.
He kissed both forearms at the same time. The goal of power deeply determines what is and what is not a proper subject of knowledge, and therefore what belongs and what does not belong into a true account of nature. Of the four causes, now know what the four causes is. If we hadn't done this, you would not know what that is. That's the four causes are up there on the board. Now, if you had to get rid of two of them, if Francis Bacon wanted to get rid of two of them out of the four, which two would they get rid of? Formal and final. Why? If you can get rid of essence, you can make essence into anything you want. What's my final cause? Well, final cause, if you get rid of final cause, now you have control over all these things. What's the final cause? We can get rid of this final cause. What's this? It's to satisfy one's hunger. The seeds are to actually make another apple tree, etc., etc. Well, we can get rid of all that because now we have power over that, see. Bacon's project of reconstructing the entire order of knowledge in the light of the ambition of power over nature is connected with a premise developed earlier in the philosophical and theological current that stands behind the Reformation, namely nominalism. Here's nominalism. Nominalism comes from the Latin term nomen. Nomen means name. Nominalism is in name only. So if I say, what is it that we share, all of us here share, what would you say? Humanness. Okay. Now, nominalism is, here's William of Ockham, who comes right after Thomas Aquinas. Thomas Aquinas dies, and all at once William of Ockham comes into being. He has form and material cause. Boom, there he is. He's a Franciscan friar in England. He is very, very, very smart. And he's very clever. And he sits there and looks at all this Thomas Aquinas stuff and says, humanness, that is what they call a universal, right? Humanness is a universal. But where is the vat? Where is the vat of universalness, humanness, out of which you take a bit of it and you put it into each human? Where is that vat of humanness? There is no such vat. It's all in the mind. Therefore, it's in name only. Do you see what he's just done? He's gotten rid of the connection that we have together.
Yes.
Just by a quirk of the mind. It's sophistry is what it is. Here's the question. Can God take all that he has created, which was good, 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 very good? Can he change that to evil, 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 very evil?
No.
Can God do that?
No.
No, God can't do that. But you want to know something? William of Ockham says he can do that. That's his idea of freedom. In other words, God has absolute freedom. And we have absolute freedom because of that, see? So he calls it the freedom of indifference. The freedom of indifference is that we're not inclined to the good, the true, and the beautiful. We're not inclined to anything. See? And we're going to get to that in Immanuel Kant in a little bit. So we're sitting and we're dealing with this crazy freedom thing where God can sit there and tomorrow say, everything I've created was a bunch of phooey, now I'm doing the exact opposite. Nominalism, however, did not yet formulate the goal of power as the measure of knowledge. Still, it eliminated from nature precisely those features that resist its subjection to power, namely a strong teleology and formal causality. What's teleology? It's the end of things. In other words, the final cause. Nominalism gets rid of the final cause and the formal cause. See? And if you can do that, you have power over anything that you see. And that's exactly what agnostics, exactly what agnostic scientists, exactly what the sexual revolutionists tried to do, is get rid of the final cause and the formal cause. And they've done it in their minds, anyway. When I look at you, I've told you 1,000 times, but I'm looking at you not as people who need catechism. I actually for real, see you as miracles. Why? Am I patting you on the head? No, I'm not patting you on the head. I'm seeing you as a miracle because you are a miracle. Why? Because you don't have to exist. But you do. I don't know why you exist, but you do. And I get the benefit of that. Does that make any sense to you? Mm-hmm. So I actually see you as who you really are, and that is a miracle. In a form, you have a formal and a material cause. What distinguishes the master of nature above all is that he can decide freely what to do with nature. He is not bound by any pre-existing purposes in nature, but sets his own purposes. Of course, the Christian tradition considers free choice a power of great dignity. Yet it is a power subordinate to love. Freedom is this, we have freedom, but what is it subordinate to? Here we go. Here comes Wojtyła. On this point, Wojtyła maintains a view that is the direct opposite of Descartes' radical metaphysical liberalism. Love consists of a commitment which limits one's freedom. It is a giving of the self, and to give oneself means just that, to limit one's freedom on behalf of another. Limitation of one's freedom might seem to be something negative and unpleasant, but love makes it a positive, joyful, and creative thing. Freedom exists for the sake of love. Does that make sense?
Ooh, that's good.
See?
That's really good.
It's not the other way around. Love did not exist to create freedom. Man longs for love more than for freedom. Freedom is the means and love the end. Freedom is the means and love the end.